All right, guys, welcome back to the Pure Playbook podcast. I'm Dr. Dustin Boston here with the athletic trainer herself, Erin Ruggieri. We also have a great guest today who's going to be able to speak on a few different things from the student athlete lifestyle and with some of his background too. We'll introduce him here in just a second, but go ahead and make sure you subscribe. Leave us some comments as we go through. We want this to be as interactive as possible. It's cool to see how this is growing, and we've getting a lot of good feedback from our in community clientele, but as this is starting to grow across multiple states and even Canada and South America, which is pretty cool, we're starting to make some good impact and getting good feedback. So make sure you subscribe. The Pure Athletes all across the platforms,
Yeah.
the underscore Pure Athlete.
Yeah.
Vital Performance as the practice. But without further ado, we're going to introduce our guest that we're going to drop today, Dre Baldwin. Thanks for coming on, bud. How are you?
I am doing excellent. You too. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, we're excited to kind of dive into your story. I like doing these podcasts like this where we're grateful that you reached out to us to be on, which is super cool. But dynamically, just so everybody knows, this is somebody that we have followed and has he has followed us, and it's kind of organically come about. So we get to learn about you kind of on the fly. So this is going to be super good as you share your story and how we can collaborate together going forward. Just helping student athletes and their parents trying to keep up.
Excellent. Let's do it.
All right, man. Well, give us a little bit of your background. How did you get to where you are? Take us through where you grew up and just kind of give us the skinny on that, and then we'll dive in on more what you're doing now.
Sure. I'll give you the 2-minute version. So I come from the city of Philadelphia, come from city of Philadelphia, PA, now based in Miami, Florida. Always played sports growing up, dabbled in a little bit of everything. Finally settled on basketball around age 14, which is pretty late for someone who's trying to go somewhere, like playing college or let alone playing the pros. Only played 1 year high school ball, sat the bench the 1 year I was on the team. I walked on to play Division III college ball, which most people listening to this know D3 athletes are not the ones that you see in the pros. They're not the ones you see on TV. So coming out of Division III, I still wanted to play ball professionally because since I started late, I could see myself as a late bloomer. So I felt like I was still getting better. Whereas most athletes, by the time they're age 18, they pretty much many of them have maxed out on who they're going to be. So I felt I was still getting better, but nobody was knocking on my door to play pro, given my background. So I did not get a chance till after a year after graduating. So I graduated college 2004. In 2005, I went to this event called an exposure camp, which I'm sure y'all are familiar with, where athletes go basically like a job fair to try to hopefully give themselves an opportunity to play pro. I played pretty well there, leveraged that performance to go get myself an agent. That agent helped me get started playing ball. My first contract was in Lithuania, Kaunas, Lithuania in 2005. Now, at the same time, I started putting footage on this brand new website called YouTube that said you can put as much footage up as you want for free. And I started to build an audience through that. So more people know me from YouTube than know me from actually being a professional athlete, funny enough. And after about 5 years of doing that, 5 years into my career as well, players started asking questions about the mindset because they found out about my background. Because I would always reply to the comments and just tell people who I was. And you only played 1 year high school and you walked on D3. So they started asking me questions about mindset, and I started talking about things like discipline and confidence and mental toughness. And the players appreciated it, of course, but also what happened, Dustin and Erin, is that people who were not athletes saw those videos, because I called them the weekly motivation. And people saw those videos and said, well, Dre, this stuff applies to me too, and I don't even play sports. So that is what told me could be my segue to having an audience that was outside of just athletes. So I kind of started to build that runway through the second half of my playing career. So we're talking about 2010 to about 2015. I stopped playing in 2015. So from that time, I was already kind of laying the foundation for my post-athletic life. So when I stopped playing ball in 2015, I just took the stuff I was already doing, which included the mindset stuff, books, speaking, courses, etc. And I dropped the basketball, and I just picked up on doing that more. And that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. So that's how we got here.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, Lithuania, when you talk about, going overseas, Europe or kind of even into Eastern Europe and things like that, Lithuania is no joke when it comes to basketball. They're always one of the countries in the mix for sure, as, even as, you talked about the Olympics and things like that. So there's a lot of great basketball over there. I had a good friend, Alex Bazell, who I went to college with too, who ended up going overseas. It was a little bit after you. We probably graduated in '05, but he went overseas too. So the fact that, I mean, you playing overseas, I mean, that's still a big deal. There's still a lot of players that are coming across, and it's also nice because everybody sees the typical story. You know, the first round draft picks, the D1 players, and but there's a fair amount of players that don't necessarily play high D1 ball that get drafted somewhere else. And I think that's awesome part of your story to say, you know, not even just on what you do now, but to encourage athletes. Like we've kind of talked about too, even how things are changing. It's not always D1 that needs to get you there.
Right.
Now it's not, maybe a little bit of a different road. I mean, it's all just as hard, but that's it's super cool that you have that aspect and that avenue to be like, you know, I took a different route to still get to the end result and have a big opportunity, which is super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, D1 doesn't hurt, but yeah.
No,
if you can do it through D3, that's good too.
but I'll tell you what, I mean, when you talk about data, I don't know how you feel about data, but you know, we're big on the things that you can control and looking at the data and the numbers and things like that. But you look at how many players do go D1 and how many players come out of it.
That's right.
But how big can you how much more can you increase the percentage of opportunity not being D1? It's like, okay, you might not go D1.
Right.
There's a couple few percent that's going to play high D1. You can go ahead and hit that if you want. We got to cut. Computer tried doing an update. But there's, you know, a small percentage that goes D1 and you actually increase your percentage. You start talking D2, D3 or going overseas, that increases your percentage to play a higher level ball big time. So
That's right.
super good. The other
Yes.
thing that you mentioned too that I'm kind of want you to dive in on is because we've had multiple guests who have kind of had the same route. That's like, you know, it was, I slept on the coach's couch to show them I was driven. I wanted to do this. And walking on, we've got a few guests that have walked on and had big careers. So as you started to transition into that D3 world, talk about some of that mindset, some of the things that you did to really help yourself stand out in all the right ways.
Well, just continuing to work on my game. So, like I said, I didn't start playing until I was 14. So I knew I was still getting better. I still had a learning curve to climb. And, you know, after my senior year of high school, that was kind of the first time when I really felt like I was good, where I really felt confident I could go play against anybody, anywhere. And I was 18 by that point, which again, most athletes, if you're going to be somebody, they know when you're 13. So I was 18, just finally getting to that point. So my first year, actually, I went to the school called Penn State Abington, which is right outside of Philadelphia. It's a commuter campus, no dorms, and I played there. So it was a kind of a small pond to start at, and I was probably the most talented player on the campus as soon as I stepped on the campus, and I barely played in high school. So it was kind of fortuitous for me to go there because it helped me build my confidence, even though it's not like anybody was watching us. And played pretty well there. And my going into my sophomore year, I just randomly ran into the coach at the school that I ended up graduating from, which is Penn State Altoona, and they were a full-fledged D3 at that time. And he recruited me right there on the spot. And turns out later on, he didn't even know who I was. He only recruited me. He only recruited me because he said, you look like the kind of player that I knew I needed. I knew I needed a wing player who was kind of athletic. And when I saw you walk by, you looked like you might be that. So that's why he approached me. And then after he approached me, he went and found out that I could actually play. So I could have been the biggest bum on the campus, but
he's like, all of a sudden, I started seeing you on YouTube randomly.
Yeah, that was 7 years later. But so for me, it was just continually working on my game. I was always a person who, the way I even got to the point that I could play in college from my late start was I always was at the park working on my game. And I'm talking outdoor concrete. This is not indoor gyms. So outdoor concrete, just working on my game through high school. Then after high school, getting into college, working on my game. The reason I met that coach was in the summertime. I was coming up to the campus in the summer to use the gym because at age 19, that was the first time I ever had access to an indoor gym consistently. Yeah. And I was using that gym by myself. None of my teammates ever came up there. And that's when I met the guy. And I didn't even meet him in the gym. I met him in the cafeteria. So he didn't even see me playing. He just saw me walking by. So, and that was, I bring that story up, excuse me, often because the fact that I was showing up and doing the work is what led to the luck. Because that was a lucky break that he ran into me. He wasn't even there looking for a basketball player. He was on other business. He just saw me walk by, and that's why he approached me. So I've always been a person who's always been in the gym working out. And when you're playing at a D3, it's a little bit different from D1s, because I know a lot of D1 players, especially when I was playing.
Mm-hmm.
At a D3, most of the players have no ambition about playing at another level after college. Most
Right.
D3 athletes are playing because they can.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm good enough to play at this college, but if they were at a D1 school, they wouldn't even be on the basketball team. But I'm good enough to be on the team here. I'll play. When my 4 years are up, it's over. I'll move on. I had a different mindset. And I had maybe one or two teammates that had that same mindset, like, hey, maybe we could do something else after this.
Mm-hmm.
And we would be the only ones who would come to the gym on our own volition to just practice by ourselves. The other guys, they would only come if we got everybody to come or if it was a team function, like practice or the coach said be there. But we would actually go to the gym on our own because we actually had the belief that we might be able to do something after college. And luckily, me and one other teammate were able to do that. But the school that I come from, nobody does it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and that's something that we talk to our athletes a lot about. Is it's like you can't, you have to put in the time. Like there's extra
Right.
the mandatory time, or it's like the even in the off season,
Yeah.
it's like you have the subjective practices. If you guys want to come lift, it's kind of like mandatory but not mandatory.
Yeah.
The coaches just can't deal
Right.
with it right then. It's like we talk about the off season being the most important, and like there's nobody else that's going to design write your book other than you. And if you're going to wait for somebody to tell you when to be there and when to work out and when to put up shots, and you're missing the boat. And so to have that drive and that understanding, but also like you said, the confidence, it's like understanding no matter what school you were at. You hear a lot of the professional athletes that say, I played with guys that were a lot better than me. I mean, that never even got an opportunity. And I think you're dead on with the belief and the confidence in yourself to be like, look, this is our situation. I'm not going to bitch, moan, whine, and complain about it.
Right.
Let's make the best of it and have confidence. Like, look, I know I can do something else after this as long as I put in the work. I'm still given a platform. It just looks a little different. There's a Kobe quote I always go back to that we've got in one of our highlight videos that we show that, he's like, Mike's journey was different than mine. AI's journey was different than mine. Shaq's journey was different than mine. He's like, you just got to figure it out, and you just got to have that opportunity to go forward, and be diligent in yourself and put in that time and persevere through it. So it's all up to us. We all have a similar opportunity to create whatever it is we want to create. So that's awesome. Who'd you grow up watching? Who was your guy? Who was your team? Who was your guy?
So we're talking when I first started getting in the ball, probably mid 90s. So
Mhm.
I mean, of course, Jordan was out there. I probably most first gravitated towards Reggie Miller because all I did
Sure.
when I first started playing was just stand at the 3-point line and shoot jump
Yep.
shots. So that's all I did because that's before I could dribble or go to the basket. So Reggie Miller was probably the first player. Then I started to like the New York Knicks. So I
Mhm.
wasn't really trying to play like any of them. I just liked the Knicks as a team.
Sure.
And then going into the mid to late 90s, then I'm from Philly, so Iverson came around. Then you had Kobe, you had Penny Hardaway,
Mhm.
and then Michael Jordan, of course, in his last couple of years. So those were the guys. Then you a little bit later, you got Tracy McGrady, Steve
Yep.
Francis, those
Mhm.
players in that era. But I would mostly say all those guys that I just named. Those are the ones that I would just try to take bits and pieces from. I didn't really try to play like any one person. I just
Sure.
took bits and pieces from everybody and just try to incorporate them into my game.
That was a super fun era in basketball. So I'll be 37 next week. So I graduated high school in 05, but that era, like even young, that Ewing and Starks era,
Right.
and then you had, Artest ended up coming up, at the tail end of Reggie. Who was Reggie's point guard at that time? Reggie and him were like villains.
Mark Jackson.
Mark Jackson was there.
Yeah.
McGrady and Vince started coming along, like you said. Penny,
Yeah,
Shaq.
Vince Carter also. He's another one. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it was, Robert Ory was kind of coming up, and then, as you continue that, the Lakers started. It was just such a fun time for basketball. I hardly ever missed a game when it come to that. So that was awesome. That was an awesome era for sure.
Yeah.
So take us to overseas. You went through D3, you made it happen. You created yourself an opportunity to then kind of move forward. You meet that goal. You have somebody who can help you kind of create that space. You talked about an agent before we come on. So take us from that D3 time into going overseas.
Yeah, so that first year out of school, I worked a couple quote unquote regular jobs. I worked at Foot Locker as an assistant manager. That was my first job out of college. Then I worked at a gym called Bally Total Fitness. I don't know if people remember that one.
Yep.
They're out of business now, but not because of me. I sold them. I sold a lot for Baldwin, but
Yeah. You helped them stay around
that's
as long as possible.
yes, exactly. Or we might have helped them put them out of business. They used to put people in bad contracts. I think that's why they
Mhm.
went out of business. But anyway, in that summer of '05, that's when I went to the exposure camp. And these camps are only like 2 days. So it's not like it's a month-long time you get to grow on people. You get 2 days to impress. And it was 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. I played pretty well there. And that scouting report and footage is what I leveraged because to get in, I understood just by deductive reasoning. I had to work backwards here. How do I get playing overseas? I knew I probably wasn't going to get on the Knicks or the Lakers from
Yeah.
where I came from. So to get overseas, I'd never been outside of the country. So I need to know somebody who knows somebody overseas because I don't know anybody. So I
Right.
figured out how to get an agent. Now, usually the way agents work is that if you're a really popular player, the agents are calling you and you just get to pick one because they're all trying to secure your services or secure you as their client.
Hmm.
But no agent was calling me because I was coming out of a D3 school and nobody knew me. So I was calling agents. So after I went to the exposure camp, I was cold calling basketball agents trying to get them to want to represent me.
Yeah.
That's what I spent the summer of 2005 doing. And that's how I was able to get an agent because I actually called about 60 of them. Any agent that had a phone number on Google, I
Mhm.
called them. And out of 60 who I called, I got in touch with 20. And they said, okay, let me see what you got. Because I told them I had footage and I had a scouting report. So I could send them a scouting report. Now, the footage, mind you, YouTube wasn't out yet.
Right.
So the footage was on this thing called a VHS tape. You remember those?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I was making copies of the VHS tape I had a double decker VCR at home. So any Gen Zers listening to this,
Hmm.
you look up VCR VHS tape or ask your parents, they'll tell you what it is. So I was making copies of that and sending it to agents. So of the 20 agents I sent it to, one of them got back or one of them responded to me when I followed up and he became the one who represented me. So that's how I ended up getting on overseas. I was still working at Valley Total Fitness. So the day that my agent called me and told me the deal's done. It was like a Sunday. He was like, you need to be on a plane on Tuesday. That's how quickly it happens.
Wow.
I had to go to Bali and tell the manager, hey, you know, I play basketball, right? Well, I just got that call. And he just shook my hand and said, congratulations. And he knew what it was. So they replace people pretty easily. So
Yeah.
that's how I ended up getting on overseas. So that was the first job. And that was late summer 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's point out the mental and relationship side of what you had just said.
Mhm.
So we've talked a little bit about the mental toughness, the perseverance, the drive. Obviously, all that came to a head. You kind of controlled your own future, controlled the controllables, right?
Mhm.
And so, however, the great thing about the story you just told in your avenue to go overseas is the fact that you were making the calls to then give yourself another opportunity. No, people weren't calling you, so take it into your own hands. And calling 60 agents is no joke. It's like how many people would call one or two, or my dad had a friend,
Right.
friend who had a friend. You make a couple calls, they deny you, and it's like, all right, maybe that's it. And
Mhm.
what I try to tell, a lot of the student athletes when we have some sort of conversation like this is fail forward, first of all, but make the calls, have the conversations, talk to the
Right.
schools, wherever you want to go, because the more no's that you get, you're closer to
Mhm.
the yes. Like no matter what it is, somebody's going to say yes. But also, too, depending on the scenario, we're trying to teach these kids earlier and earlier and help their parents understand like there's somebody in the stands. There's a connection in your Rolodex. You're only 5 to 8 degrees away from the person that you need to meet to get to where you want to be. Have those conversations earlier, shake those hands, ask those questions. But just because you get one no, you get 60, you acquire 20, and then those 20 you have to ask again. And then more no's you get, you're just getting closer to the yes. So to stick that out, how many people would have made 60 calls and then 20 more?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And even to this day, and doing things like what we're doing here, like you said at the beginning of this episode, I reached out to you all.
Yeah.
I still do reach out. We still reach out to people every single day in the professional speaking business. We
Mhm.
still are reaching out to people, or we're going through the CRM, me and my assistant every day. Like, oh, what leads do we need to update? Who do I need to call? Who do you need to get information of? So we're still doing that outreach. You know, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful life when all your opportunities are incoming. You just have to take the calls.
Yeah.
But no business can sustain just on those.
Right.
Every business is still doing consistent outreach. So I do business with people who do a lot more business than we do over here, and they are still doing outreach every single day, usually doing more of it than people who are doing 10% of what they're doing
Mhm.
business wise. So that outreach factor is a big deal. And a lot of athletes, it's interesting that you brought this up because a lot of athletes would prefer, even I would have when I was playing, that my performance alone was enough. I just play and I'm just so good that everything just happens the way it's supposed to happen. But
Mhm.
I realized very early in the process, once I got out of college, okay, I'm coming from a Division III college. So all the players at D2, all the players at D1 who are getting out, they are all going to be looked at as better than me just because of where they went, regardless of what we do on the court. So I know I'm not going to get my opportunity just by just playing. I know I'm going to have to do something else. What can I do that they won't do? So that was a question I was always asking myself. And that's when I kind of tapped into this sales and marketing mindset that I've always had. And my ability to sell and market myself is the only reason I got a chance.
Yeah. Aaron and I tell people all the time too that when we kind of really forge the pure athlete stuff forward, it's like, and what I like about what you're saying and what we're about to talk about with what you're doing now is if people can attach, like if you have a good mission, like you're going to do the reach out. If you're just trying to sell for the sake of selling to try to make an income, like people are gonna smell that real quick. But
Right.
the more as an entrepreneur, as a healthcare provider, as a service-based industry, no matter what you do, I think it would show a lot to people. And what I want people to notice too is like we're willing to do the reach out, which means we truly want to help. Like if more people would take those calls, and it happens across all the platforms, it's like there's more places we want to get into to have an opportunity to share the mission on we're here to help and provide and mentor, and the mission is good, no different than yours. And it's like I think the more that you're willing to reach out, there's a level of trying to push the mission, not just trying to sell too. So I can appreciate that too. The more that you're willing to reach out, most of the time will show how good work you're trying to do. So I can appreciate that because you're dead on, and we're always looking for programs and club soccer or club softball, club sports in general. And that's happening now. And without the reach outs, without the Rolodex, without the handshaking and actively doing that, like you said, you can hang whatever you want above the door. You can put whatever book you want on a post, but that doesn't mean it's going to attract to you. You still have to do the work. Uh,
Absolutely.
Now, okay, so you head overseas, D3, Bally's done. Tuesday, you're on a flight to Lithuania.
Yeah.
Tell us about Lithuania as we get into the work on your game process.
It was amazing. It was amazing to be traveling the world and doing it based on basketball. So I just kept, reminding myself as I was doing it. At this point, I'm 23 years of age. So it was my first time out of the country. And I had gone from, that background. Less than 10 years earlier, I was just starting to play basketball. Now here I am playing professionally with euros in my pocket. And
Yeah.
there were a couple other Americans there. There were a couple. One American was one of my teammates. There was a guy from Africa who spoke perfect English, but he was on my team. And there was another guy on another team in that same town, and he was American. So they all had experience having played overseas. I had never been overseas, so I was kind of hanging with them, and they were just kind of showing me the ropes, and we were just walking around. And I remember just walking around the downtown of Kaunas, and everybody knows that you're there to play basketball because it's not a bunch of 6'5" black guys walking around. Right.
Right.
So they all know that you're a basketball player, and only the young people spoke English at that point. So anybody under the age of like 30, that most of them could speak English, but the older people didn't. But everybody's looking at you. People want to take pictures with you, and they don't even know who you are. Like they don't know you. They just know you're a basketball player. So you're somebody just because you're on the basketball team. So it was a very surreal experience. Now I was only there. And the way overseas basketball works is that you can get shifted in and out very quickly. So I was only there in Lithuania for about 6 weeks. And I was back in the USA. And then after that, I went and played for a traveling team in the USA. And every year I was on a different team. So I don't know how much detail you want to go into with this, but the Lithuania experience lasted about 6 weeks. It was very fun because it was the first experience, and a lot of people didn't speak English. So you just learn to get around and communicate. Even on my team, besides the American guy and the African guy, none of my teammates spoke English. None of them. The coach did not speak English. So my agent, who was an American guy, he connected with an agent in Lithuania who was a younger guy who did speak English. That Lithuanian agent had to come to practice every day. And whenever the coach said, the agent had to tell us what the coach said. So he was basically working as an interpreter. in practice, which actually is a good thing for players because you can pretend like you don't understand what the coach said and do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So it was that was fun. It was also interesting that he didn't speak English, but I dealt with that more than once in my career, playing for a coach who didn't speak English and most of my teammates not speaking English, and you just having to figure out how to communicate. But the further along my career went, the higher the percentage of people who did speak English because it just started to spread more, of course, with our media and all of that stuff. So that's how it started.
Yeah, it's nice to have the hand signals too. Man, you can throw the back door
Right.
out. You can, you got all the hand signals too, which kind of help.
Yeah.
It's kind of a universal
Yeah.
language.
Well, you
The
said that.
language on the court is pretty universal.
Yeah.
So
Right.
set a screen, pick and roll. They know those phrases, block, foul. They know that stuff. But as far as like any type of conversational stuff, they didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important was that to have those other guys there, and how do you think that would have been different? Say you were the only American speaking
Mm.
teammate on the team, and you didn't have those other guys to lean on. How did that go for you, and how could have that gone different?
For me, it didn't make that much of a difference, Dustin, simply because I don't have a problem just being by myself.
Sure.
And I didn't have it was no culture shock or anything like that for me to be traveling because again, I wanted to do this. I wanted to
Right.
play. Look at all the times I had to take initiative to even make this thing keep going. So it was cool because I could just kind of see how my teammate, this guy named Mike. And this guy, one thing I will tell you about Mike is not really a basketball thing, but he was the most prolific at approaching girls I've ever seen in my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is all this guy would do. He would leave our apartment. We had the same apartment, and he would just go outside and just talk to girls and get their phone numbers. And this guy collected probably 100 phone numbers in a month. I never seen anybody do that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he had all this experience of being overseas. He had been in all these different countries. He knew how to hustle. He knew how to sell himself. So I just picked up a few things from him as far as how he conducted himself off the court, as far as his next opportunities and things like that. But as far as those other guys being there, it was fine because they knew stuff. Like they knew where the club was at, and they knew where. How do you order some pizza? I said I want some pepperoni. They didn't know what that meant. I said no, you got to say salami. That's what salami is.
Yeah.
Pepperoni.
Sure.
Yep.
So just it was little things like that, but I probably would have figured it out one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. So now let's get into what you're doing now. As you know, I know you've got quite a few books out, and with the experience that you've gained, with your career and how it's gone and going overseas, that's brought you kind of into to doing what you're doing today. So kind of fill us in on what you're doing.
Yeah, so today a company's called Work on Your Game, and what we do is we take the mental tools and strategies to help athletes reach the top of the sports game, and we translate them over to the business game to help professionals perform at their highest level, do so consistently, and of course produce results, which in business usually means make more money. So that's our main focus, and it's based on 4 pillars of mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability. So we just take the stuff that again works in the sports world, and I basically create translations of the stuff from sports aside from the physical stuff. So we don't have people doing burpees and push-ups, but the mental and strategic stuff that works for athletes, and how can you use that stuff in your business life? Because people like the concept of, okay, to be a pro athlete, we know you had to be in the top 2% or top 1% of what you do. So how can I take that same idea and apply it in business? So that's really the angle that we approach things from on a high level.
Yeah, I think that's so cool because we tell the athletes all the time that like after they're an athlete, those skills that they're learning are still going to be applicable. And
Absolutely.
so it's cool that you've made that like a business model of doing that as well.
Yeah, Aaron's kind of coined the phrase of "there's always life after sport," and we talk about that a lot. And you mentioned that right off the beginning as I was circling the wagons. That's where I wanted to go when I was talking about something earlier, and I shifted. But that was something that you brought pretty earlier. Like, at the end of the day, this could be it for me. So what am I going to do after that? And it's not necessarily a plan B. Like plan A is plan A, B, and C.
Right.
However, having that mental aspect in the perspective of whether I'm 24 or 44, chances are between those ages, like there's your life after sport somewhere in that range. And then what the hell do you do? Like you hear all of the stories. I mean, I'm sure, I don't know, Dre, if you've heard the story of Mark Cuban rolling back home from American Airlines Arena back to his house in South Lake, and one of his former players is standing in the middle of the road trying to take money because he's broke. bankrupt, had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And so he's in Dallas, didn't have money to get out, and Cuban rolls by and is like, "What are you doing?" And he, so whether it's the financial fortitude to be able to know what to do with your money, or maybe you don't have that luxurious career with 9-10 figure contracts now that we're looking at. What do you do? So you spoke on that early. At what point did you know this was kind of the, I think I'm gonna do this and really speak into what I'm doing now? At what point in time did you figure that out?
I figured that out before I even started playing.
Yeah.
Before I started playing pro. So that was go back in the story. So about 2002. So I graduated college in 2004. Started playing in 2005. 2002, I responded to a bulletin board posting on my college campus. So again, Gen Zers bulletin boards are like the internet physical version. All right. So I responded to this bulletin board posting that said, make some extra money on the side in the summertime. And when you're an athlete, and this is before name, image, and likeness, you can't make any money. You work in class, no money. So I responded to it. And it turned out this guy was in network marketing, which I didn't build a business in, but I did go to some meetings. And in those meetings, these guys are talking about, well, you got to build yourself personally if you're going to build a business, which made sense to me. They were just breaking down all these false beliefs about money and revenue that I had in my own head, and no one had taught these to me. And it all made perfect sense. And this guy also said, well, look, go buy the personal development and the business books outside of the room when you leave. And one of the books was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Yep. Which I did not buy at the moment because I didn't have any money. But I went and got a pirated version off eBay for like 99 cents. Yeah. And I read that book, and that planted the seeds of entrepreneurship in my head. And I told myself, when I get done playing basketball, I'm going to do this. I don't know how, what format, but I'm going to do something like that. So starting my career, again, coming out of a Division III school, there was no guarantee I was going to get a chance to play at all, let alone almost 10 years. So after every job ended, there was no guarantee I was going to get the next one or the next one or the next one. So it was always, well, what if the next one doesn't happen? So about 2005, this around the time when I mentioned I started talking about mindset more because the players were asking. The phone was not ringing. I was a free agent. Phone wasn't ringing. The season had started, and I was at home not playing. So, like you said, that you hear a lot of players, or a lot of people we see on TV, the Division I's and NBA draft picks. But there are many more people who have situations like mine was than the people you see on TV, because only 60 guys get drafted in the NBA. Yeah. So every one LeBron James, you got 1,000 Dre Baldwins, right? Good enough to play pro, but no guarantee that you're going to keep playing. So when that phone wasn't ringing, I said to myself, well, if it doesn't ring again, what can I do? How can I take this little audience of people I have on YouTube and the fact that I'm kind of a computer geek and making money? How can I combine all three? And basketball? How can I combine all of these together into something? And that's when I started creating my own products and services. So my first product was a $4.99 training program for basketball players. I made one for dribbling, one for shooting. So I actually had two. And when I made the first sale that night, Dustin and Aaron, I said to myself, I can do this for the rest of my life. Yeah. So what I had done is created what I now know to be intellectual property. Take an idea from your head, make it into something real, put a price tag on it, and exchange it for money. And I knew I wouldn't be able to jump 40 inches in the air forever, but I knew I could take an idea out of my head, turn it into a product, and sell it forever. That will last a lot longer. And by this point, I'm about halfway through my career. Luckily, the phone rang again. But from that point forward, the last 5 years of my career, I was creating more products. I started writing books. Now self-publishing became ubiquitous. Google purchases YouTube. So now you can make money from having videos on YouTube. Before you were just putting videos out but there was no ROI. And that's when I really started to also build an audience of people who were looking to me for stuff outside of just on the court. Because another thing to remember is that all these ball players following me, these are 13 to 24-year-old young men who were aspiring players. Not all of them made it to play in high school. Not all of them made it to play in college, and most of them didn't play pro. So eventually, all of them, their careers ended at some point, and they still have the rest of life to live. And their rest of life, mine started when I stopped playing when I was 33. But some of them, the rest of their life might start when they're 14, might start when they're 19, might start when they're 21. So they moved on to other things in life. And luckily, because I was talking about things other than just basketball or things that applied outside of basketball, they continue to follow me. So many of those young men and young women as well are still in my audience to this very day, even though most of them did not become pro athletes. Right. So the thing is, I was always had the consideration that no matter how long I play, if I stop playing when I'm 40, because at this point, Michael Jordan had come back and he was like 40 when he stopped playing. And that seems old when you're watching sports, but 40 is relatively young in life. Right.
Yeah.
My grandma's like 90, right? So you still got another half of your life to live after you get done playing sports.
Yep.
And unless you were, again, Kobe, like you said, you don't have the 9, 10 figures in the bank, you may still want to work or have to work for some reason to keep up whatever lifestyle, take care of your family, etc. So I was always thinking about what else am I going to do after sports is done? And how else can I contribute to society? Because even if you did make enough money that maybe you don't need to work, who are you? Are you going to just keep talking about the fact that you played basketball 10 years ago? Like eventually you have nothing to add to the conversation because you're not doing anything. So
Right.
Right.
I always had it in my head, what else am I going to bring to the table? And a good thing for me and just the world that we're in today, Dustin and Aaron, is that you can build a business around, I guess some people call it a lifestyle business, just based around doing things that you like to do. So my parents, our parents, many of them had to take jobs. They didn't really like the job, but they needed to take the job because it took care of the family.
Right.
Whereas we do jobs too, but you can build a job around making videos on YouTube. You can build a job around writing books from your computer at home. You could build a job through your phone without leaving your house. And you can make money from those things, which is usually those businesses are more favorable to what we actually enjoy. Our business can be built around what we like doing rather than what we have to do. So the good thing about the internet coming around and becoming what it became as I was going through my career was it was just perfect timing. So now all the stuff that I do these days, I mean, besides updating the CRM and lead sourcing, I don't like doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But most of the stuff that I do, I like doing. I know my super skills, which are talking to audiences like this, talking to people one-on-one, and writing. So I try to set my business up so I'm spending most of my time doing that, and I have other people doing all the other stuff that is necessary. So I actually enjoy what I'm doing. So I don't see myself getting to a point like, all right, I can't wait till I can retire from this.
Right.
I don't look at it like that because I enjoy doing it. It's fun for me. So that's the beauty of the internet becoming what it became as it has, at least for someone like me. Even you too as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's and that's something that we're continuing to do too with, kind of the bit of audience that we're continuing to try to build. And, what else can we provide from the mission that we're trying to drive, and building athletes better and giving parents excellent resources in healthcare so they know where to go, who to trust. And while that might not always be us, and you probably run into this too, it might not always be, it might not always be us that they want or need to engage with.
Right.
I say all the time, Dre. I say we're here for anybody. We're not for everybody, and that's okay. But continuing to find out what those, what that committed clientele needs. We're willing to take care of and speak into people who are committed to taking care of themselves in whatever aspect along the pillars that we have and whatever business you create. And being able to push that forward gives you the opportunity for them to tell you also what you need. And there's a fulfilling and gratifying thing for us all being athletes, life after sport. It gives us that sense of camaraderie all over again. And I think, I hope on some level that we all, you, us, we all can be great examples of there is life after sport, and that doesn't define you. Those first 15, 25, 30 years don't define who you are. So
Right.
when that does go away, and now it gives you great opportunities, it's a part of your story, but don't let the end of it define that it's the end of your life. There's more. If we can attach what we do to why it's important and how this helps other people and the impact that you're going to have afterwards, I think those people who have 2-year careers or 22-year careers are going to be more fulfilled at the end of the day, because there is so much opportunity with the technology we have and the resources we have and where you can put it. And if you're in it in the long haul and can see the bigger vision on how this impacts more people in the next generation, and we start to teach people these skills across the boards that we're talking about, it's going to trickle down, and it's eventually going to make the world a better place, because the more people who attach to the mission that we're a part of in the communities that we're in, they're going to be able to share that. And I think the world needs more of what we're all doing. And I mean, I love what that's all about. Now, you mentioned Rich Dad Poor Dad. I know you've written a few books. What are some other resources that you kind of went through as you were growing up? What was the next book? What was the next thing that kind of helped you stay on track, that you really went into as you continue to build and learn kind of the craft that you're in now?
Man, well, I read probably 1,000 books, so I could reference to you. But Rich Dad Poor Dad was a big one. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is
Yep.
another. My favorite author is Robert Greene. So 48 Laws of Power, 33 Strategies of War, the 50th Law, three of my favorites. Napoleon Hill's Law of Success as well. Success Principles by Jack Canfield is another
Yep.
one of my favorites.
Met Jack.
Letters from a Stoic. Luis Seneca is another, and Dan Kennedy is a guy I've been going through a lot of his stuff now. He's an older marketing guy who's pretty much retired these days, but he has a lot of material out there. So I've been going through a lot of his older stuff. So he has a book called No BS Time Management. Really good book on taking control of your time for entrepreneurs specifically. So those are just a few, but I could probably list you 100 books if we kept talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I asked that strategically too, because I always try to get our student athletes to read more, either listen or read. I vet books as I listen. So those ones that you speak of, right on, Good to Great, How to Never Lose a Customer Again, Win Friends and Influence People by Carnegie. And so a lot of times I'll listen to them as I'm in the gym, sometimes twice a day. I'm on, traveling as I'm racing. I'm always listening, but then I will go through a book 4, 5, 6, 7 times, but I will get the hard copy. If I'm going to go through it again, I will get the hard copy. And there's just so many good resources. And no matter what, you don't know what you're going to learn and when you're going to need to learn it. And the more that you can just dive in, and I think my big word I just need to just coin is just perspectives. Like on my gravestone goes, this guy had perspective. And you just never know when one of those books is going to show up. They might read one as a junior in high school, and then they might not realize, like, oh man, I remember when I read this book and it's exactly where I'm at now, and I'm 25. Let me go back and reference that. Anything that's been done, anything that we want to do, chances are has been done. So learn from the people who did it great. Learn from the Kobe's, learn from the Hormozis, learn from the Buffetts, learn from Elon, but also learn from the people who are just steps ahead of you. And so, a lot of the young athletes that can learn from you, that can learn from us, and who did you learn from? And they can continue up the ladder, because not always the book, the person, the job, the circle that you have, those that got you here, guaranteed most of them cannot get you there, wherever there is. So continuing to pour into yourself, learn, increase your intellect and perspective through books, through writing. I mean, even going through what you think and what your goals are. And obviously you mentioned that you love writing as well. And it's like, there's so many different perspectives you can write from. Literature is so important. So when they talk about, oh, I've got philosophy class, it's like the number one class that all of our student athletes say, oh, I got a philosophy test and I'm reading Poe and all this stuff. Learning why that's important. It's not about Poe, being boring and from whenever. I'm bad with history, being from 17, 18, whenever Poe is around, or Shakespeare. It's like, learn why you're reading that, because it's teaching you perspectives and how to interpret what it is you're taking in and how to apply, not necessarily about the story.
Yeah, and I'm with you on the reading the book more than once. And the good thing about audio is that you can take it in more than once in a very short period of time. You can do multiple things at the same time. You could be washing dishes, taking care of the kids, and you can still take in the book. I mean, Good to Great's another great one. So I'm glad you mentioned that one as well. So yeah, 100% with you on that. And one thing I will add to that is, I remember I put my first book out. It's called Buy a Game. And it was just the only book of mine that's a story book. It was me just telling my story from when I first started playing to when I stopped. Or so through college rather. And at that point, my audience was all basketball players. And when I put that book out for free, just letting people download it, a lot of ball players told me later on that that book got them into reading books, because a lot of athletes don't read. They just want to play ball, right? They just want to play. And they read that book of mine and they enjoyed it. And then they would hear me often talk about books. And I would talk about the books that I'd read and why I was reading them and what I got from them. And many ball players to this day have told me that hearing me talk about books and seeing me writing books got them into reading, because they otherwise would not have read. And studies have shown that when people get out of school, formal school, and they never read another book the rest of their lives.
Right.
So getting people into reading is a big thing, because someone who writes a book condenses 5, 10, 20 years of experience down into 200 pages. And that's a great return on investment for people who can sit down and just discipline themselves to read, or put their headphones in and read nowadays.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So family, real quick. fill us in
Mhm.
on what's Dre's family like nowadays. You go through
Well,
basketball. When give us as we kind of wrap up here. I want to kind of connect the personal side now, and so tell us about Dre's family.
well, just three of us now, me,
Yeah,
the missus, and one baby. He is 20 months of age right now. So just three of
congratulations.
us. I think he's napping right now. You don't hear him. He's sleeping. Hopefully. He hasn't taken a nap the last couple days, and that wasn't good. So we need to make sure he napped today. But that's it. Maybe we'll expand, maybe not. But that's what we got. So hopefully he has some height on him and I can get him on the court.
There
He
you
gets
go.
some more walking coordination.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you doing now? What's 2024 look like? What's Dre doing going forward? What are we working on?
Well, the biggest thing is our university, Work on Your Game University. That's where we do all our coaching, speaking, training, consulting. All of it comes out of the university. Of course, I got a couple more books in the works that we haven't announced yet, but always working on book stuff. Just yesterday, I came up with a couple ideas for books. So I just
Yeah.
write them down in Google Docs and then I just go get to them and I just go write them out. And then the other thing is getting back into the speaking circuit. I didn't do a lot of speaking the last like really after COVID, I didn't do a lot of speaking, but now we're getting back into doing more
Mhm.
speaking gigs. So doing more of those, and that's really it. Those are the main focuses that we have, and yeah, our university is where most of the activity is happening.
Nice. We'll definitely drop some links in as we post this. So when this podcast comes out, we'll make sure we get all of that so we can link it up. We'll also do some collaboration on social media as well. But I
Perfect.
like the speaking side too. Now that the way we're kind of growing and another doc coming on, I'm hoping to do the same as you and get back kind of into the speaking world. I've spoken on some chiropractic stages for sure. But with what we're doing with the pure athlete, I'm looking forward to putting myself out there and having the opportunity to speak on stage. Who knows, Dre? Maybe you and I need to create a stage, and we'll both just go speak on it. We'll create something and collaborate together. And if that's an opportunity here going
Yeah.
forward, we'll definitely as we've kind of done that on the dance side. We've got some cool stuff coming out for our dance athletes, and that seems to be going well. We've gotten some good feedback on that, and we create that. We're gonna kind of take that across some other sports platforms as well. So, but I'm with you.
Perfect.
I do like to speak. I like to pour in. There's always more I can learn. I think a lot of student athletes should take the time to learn how to speak, eliminate the uhs, but how to create a story and really get your point across and things like that. I enjoy speaking. I'm not the greatest at it yet, always getting better, but I'm with you. Be on some more stages and make a bigger impact.
Yeah. Closest you can get to playing in the game is the professional speaking. Nothing else comes close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Well, as we wrap up, man, anything else, anything we can do for you, anything you're looking for, anybody we can connect you with if we have an opportunity, or is there what can we do for you?
Well, just get this out when this episode comes out. If you can, I don't know if you all clip it out or you put the full
Mhm.
video out, but we grab videos and we'll clip them out as well. Make sure we get you two tagged or your show tagged in it, and
Yeah.
we'll get it shared. And really just spreading the message. That's why I reached out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, if there's anything you ever need from us going forward, anything you have questions on, if you want to collaborate on anything, we're totally open for that. But really enjoyed having you on. Thank you guys for reaching out. Love your story. I think that's more common of a story than people
Mhm.
realize. And for all of you listening out there, you parents, student athletes, take the story into your own hand. Put in the time, put in the effort, and just know that there is life after sport, and
Yeah.
that's okay. But kind of it doesn't have to be plan B, but have that in your head now because anybody can do it.
Right.
That top 1-2% that we talked about, may have an easier road, but you know
Mhm.
what? You can't judge your story against somebody else's book. And so, take it into your hands, do the work. If you need any resources or help, either reach out to us. If Dre connects with you, reach out to him as well. We'll have his information and contacts in the links, or you can message us personally. But super great having you on, man. I hope the main man's sleeping. I hope he's getting some good sleep. You guys can have a good rest of your weekend. But thank you again for coming on. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Thanks for sharing your platform.
Yeah, man, absolutely. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed. See ya.